Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. Really excited to be kicking off the month of February with Emily Calandrelli. This month, we are celebrating awesome women in science and exploration. We kicked all the males out. They'll join us again in March, and we're going to have tons of events featuring conservation, exploration, adventure, and all things related. So as I mentioned, Emily's joining us today. She's an MIT engineer turned science communicator, the host and producer of Fox's Xploration Outer Space, and a correspondent on Bill Nye Saves the World. She also is authoring a STEM book series, The Ada Lace Adventures. She's very passionate about space exploration, and she's working hard to make sure that young students everywhere, especially women and minorities, are aware of how many amazing careers and opportunities exist for those who want to pursue a career in STEM. So Emily, it's always great to have you stealing some time, and it's even better to have you kicking off the month of February for us.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I'm so happy to be here. Hi to all of the classrooms around the country and to the couple in Canada as well. I'm so excited that you guys have joined me here today. So I want to give you a little bit of background of how I became a science TV show host, because that is not what I set out to do when I was in college and when I was in high school. I was actually an engineer. So I studied aerospace engineering. Basically, that means I studied things that fly in the sky and fly in space. Aero is the stuff that flies in the sky, flies in air, and space is the stuff that flies in space. And I studied mechanical engineering. So I basically studied how things are put together. And so I went to school for a while. I did my undergrad at West Virginia University. I'm from West Virginia. Are any of the classrooms here on the East Coast? I think we had someone from Florida here. Raise your hand if you guys are from the East Coast. Okay, I see a few of you. Yeah, so I'm on the East Coast. I lived in the East Coast myself, but today I live in California. And today I have a TV show called Xploration Outer Space. And as the host of this show, I get to travel all around the country and sometimes to different countries to highlight the coolest things that are happening in the space industry today. So that means everything from rockets and spaceships and rovers on Mars and searching for aliens and everything in between. I get to basically live out my dream job because, as I said, I studied this stuff, right? I went to school for aerospace engineering, and now I get to go all around the country to talk to the coolest people who are working on the coolest projects in the space industry today. It is a really, really fun job. And if you want to watch that show, it's on Saturday mornings on your local Fox channel or on Amazon Prime. We have 5 seasons out, which is pretty fun. Actually, I was in Russia a couple months ago. We went to Russia to go to the place where they train astronauts to go into the Russian rocket to go into space. And when I was there, I rode in a human centrifuge. Now, a human centrifuge is basically a ride. It's like kind of like an amusement park ride that looks like this, where imagine the humans are in my hand and it's spinning around a room like this. And if you've ever spun something really, really, really fast, you know that the things in the hand get pushed out to the side. Like if you've ever ridden one of those rides in an amusement park where it spins you really fast, it's kind of uncomfortable because you get pushed back in your seat and you feel all of this force on your chest, right? Well, they do that so that the people inside the hand can feel what it's like to launch in a rocket into space. Because when you're launching in a rocket into space, you feel force on your chest. They call this G forces, gravitational forces. And so they want to prepare the astronauts for what their ride is going to be like into space. And so they do that by riding in a human centrifuge, putting them at the end, putting them in this hand, and swinging them around in this chamber so they go faster and faster and faster and faster and feel more and more forces on their chests. So I got to do that. I got to feel what it was like to launch into space. And it was so, so cool. It was kind of uncomfortable because you feel like 4 times your weight on your chest, kind of like if 4 of you were sitting on your chest. That might be really uncomfortable, right? but that's what a launch is like. So that was really, really cool. Another job that I have recently is I've been working with a guy named Bill Nye. Raise your hand if any of you guys have heard of Bill Nye. Okay, you guys know who Bill Nye is, right? Well, when I was your age, I loved Bill Nye. Bill Nye was my hero. We got to watch him every month or so. The teacher would bring in a tape of his and we'd watch one of his videos, Bill Nye the Science Guy, right? And so he has a new show on Netflix called Bill Nye Saves the World. And I get to be a correspondent for him, which basically means he sends me to different parts of the world to go find really cool science. So last year I got to go to India to find really cool science on things like vaccinations and space exploration and education, all of these really, really cool things that are happening in India. So that's been a really, really fun job because I get to work with one of my heroes. But one of my latest jobs that I'm really excited about is I created a book. So I made a book called The Ada Lace Adventures, and there's 5 books in the series. Now, Ada is a 3rd grader who loves science and technology and goes on adventures to solve mysteries with tech and gadgets that she builds herself. It's really, really cool. I love this book. And I created it because I kind of wanted to make a book that I wish that I had when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we had a lot of books about science, but they weren't really that much fun, right? Reading about science didn't really seem that much fun. So I wanted to create a book about adventure that just also happened to have science. And so the 5th book is coming out next week, which is really, really exciting. The 5th book is coming out next week. So I wanted to share my screen so I can show you guys some of the things that I'm talking about here. So we're going to go over here. All right, Joe, will you let me know if they're having problems seeing that? Is that okay?
All right, you're nice and full screen. We're good to go.
All right. So this is the title of my show, Xploration Outer Space. And if you are online and you're searching for me, I'm known as the Space Gal online. That's my name across all of social media. People know me as the Space Gal because I am obsessed with space. And these are some of the adventures I've been on, trying on different astronaut suits, flying in something called the Vomit Comet. That upper right-hand corner one, that's where I got to try on a spacesuit in Russia. That's what the Russian cosmonauts. Cosmonaut is the Russian name for astronaut. That's what they call their astronauts. I got to try on a cosmonaut suit. And in the middle, that's me working with Bill. Very exciting. That's me with Bill too. He loves fist bumps. That's his thing. And these are the books. So the Ada Lace Adventures, there's 5 out now. They're very colorful and very fun. Now, this is not the career that I expected that I would have when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, I did not consider myself one of the smart kids. I was the first person in my family to pursue science and technology. Neither of my parents knew much about science or engineering. I didn't have anyone in my extended family that had pursued science or engineering. Most people in my family didn't go to college. And so I was the first person to go into science. And I kind of thought that maybe you could only be good at science if your parents are good at science. But it turns out that's not the case. We can make ourselves one of the smart kids. Through hard work and dedication, you can make yourself one of the smart kids. I was never the fastest learner, but I was always the hardest worker. And so when I got to college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to major in, but I saw a poster like this on the wall in one of the hallways. And it had one of the students floating like this, like an astronaut, a student who was like 18 years old, floating like this. And I was like, what could this possibly be? Well, it turns out that it's a class that you can take if you studied aerospace engineering, where you work with a team of friends and you design an experiment that you want to test in this weightless environment. So basically things that you'd want to test in space, and NASA will look at your experiment and figure out if it's good enough. And if they think it's good enough, they'll invite you to fly on something called the Vomit Comet. Now, I want to tell you what the Vomit Comet is, because the Vomit Comet is pretty cool. So the Vomit Comet is a plane that flies like a roller coaster. It is basically an 8,000-foot roller coaster in the sky. And researchers and NASA use it as a laboratory to test different experiments to see how they would react in the different environment of space, of weightlessness, right? Because when things float, things will act a little differently. Have you ever seen a flame in space? Flames are really cool in space because if you see a flame here on Earth, I'm trying to see if I have any lighters or anything around here. If you see, I don't think that I have one on hand, but if you see a flame on Earth, it makes a teardrop shape, right? We've all seen candles, right? They have that teardrop shape. Well, the only reason they make that shape is because we have gravity here on Earth. And what happens is hot air, which is lighter than regular air, rises, right? And it forms that shape because it stretches out that flame. Hot air rises. That's why hot air balloons float up into the air, right? So because we have gravity, hot air rises and it stretches out that flame. But if you have a fire in space, what does that flame look like? Right? It goes off in all different directions. So instead of a teardrop shape, you have what looks like a sphere, like a globular sphere of fire. It looks so cool. So if you haven't seen fire in space, you should have your teachers Google fire in space for you because it looks really, really awesome. So anyways, I wanted to fly on the Vomit Comet, but to do that, I had to study aerospace engineering. And it turns out that that was the best decision I could have ever made because flying on the Vomit Comet is the best, most fun thing anyone could ever do. And because that was the reason that I wanted to go into engineering, I wanted to give the gift of the Vomit Comet to somebody else when I had my TV show. So when I got my TV show, I created an extra special episode called the Student Astronaut Contest. And the Student Astronaut Contest is this nationwide contest where we want to find one student to give an experience of a lifetime to help launch their career in the space industry. And one year, the free gift that we gave away was a free ride on the Vomit Comet. And that's a big deal because if you want to pay just to ride on the Vomit Comet for fun, it's like $6,000 or $7,000. It's really expensive. And so this was a really cool gift that I couldn't wait to give away. And so we had people all over the country apply. But to win, you had to suggest a cool experiment that you wanted to do on the Vomit Comet, right? And so we had people suggest all different types of experiments. One person wanted to work with a slinky. One person wanted to basically try to eat different things in microgravity. One person wanted to cook in weightlessness. One person wanted to dance in weightlessness. And so we picked the person who wanted to dance in weightlessness because he brought up a really good point. He was saying dancers here on the ground, you don't really think about how gravity affects every single thing that you do. Every jump that you make, every twirl that you twirl, gravity is affecting how that works. And so he wanted to do some of the same moves that he practices here on Earth in the Vomit Comet to see what it would look like. And it looks pretty ridiculous. It is very, very hard to dance in weightlessness. So I wanted to show you a video of what that experiment ultimately ended up looking like. So here we go. Let's show you that. All right. Oh, nope. Let's do this and then this. So that was the best experience of my life, basically. That was so much fun. And so if you saw, basically there's periods of weightlessness where you feel weightless. And that's when you're going over the hump. Like if you're going over the hump in a roller coaster, sometimes your butt lifts off your seat and you get some airtime, right? It's basically like that, but you get airtime for between 20 and 25 seconds. So you feel weightless, and then you still have to go back up, right? Because after you dive back down, you have to go back up. And when you go back up, it's kind of like going back up on a roller coaster where you feel like you're getting pushed back into your seat, except you're zooming up at hundreds of miles per hour. So you feel really, really heavy. And then you feel weightless and heavy and weightless and heavy and weightless and heavy for an hour and a half, which is why they call it the vomit comet. Now, if you notice, Sam and I were wearing flight suits during our flight. And in that flight suit, we have a pocket right here. And in that pocket, you bring the most important tool that you will bring on the vomit comet. Can you guess what that tool might be?
Let me pick a class to guess.
Yeah.
Let's go to our class in North Bay. What do you think the really important thing is you keep in your pocket, Miss Larmer's class?
Okay, we got an answer for you. You've got an answer. A vomit bag?
It's a barf bag. It's a barf bag. You actually keep multiple barf bags because it is likely that you will barf multiple times. And so if you get sick, you have to quickly get your barf bag, throw up in the bag, tie it off, and hand it off to one of the workers there, which may or may not be one of the worst jobs somebody can have. But it's important, right? Because there's experiments all over the plane. And what happens when you throw up in weightlessness? Where does that throw up go? Everywhere, right? Because everything works differently in weightlessness. That's why they use this as a laboratory, not just for fire, not just for throw up, but for all different types of things, exercise equipment, fluid dynamics, how water moves differently, how people can cook in microgravity or weightlessness, right? Because everything that we do up in space is going to be a little bit different than how it works here on Earth. So we need to study those things if we ever want to send humans into space, if we ever want to send humans to another planet, to another solar system. So the vomit comet is a really, really important tool. And for me, it's been one of the most fun tools I have ever had the opportunity to check out. So I've been really, really lucky. And if we have a little bit more time, I just wanted to show you one other video that's pretty short, just a couple minutes. And this one is a video of a different experience that I had with my TV show recently. I actually did something really scary recently. I had to embrace my fears and get over my fears. And my biggest fear is actually the deep, dark ocean. Going into the ocean and scuba diving in the deep, dark ocean is very, very, very scary for me. But I had to do it for my show because there's something really, really cool 60 feet under the ocean off the coast of Key West, Florida, that I wanted to show my viewers. But I had to conquer my fears to do that. So I want to quickly show you the video of that experience.
Emily, if there is sound with the video, can you just turn it up high on your end so it'll come through?
Okay, yeah, it's as high as it'll go. So.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
if it's quiet and you want to say anything over it, feel free.
Oh, okay, sounds good. So yeah, I mean, first things first, the moral of the story here is that what I learned is that being brave doesn't mean that you don't have fears, right? Because we're all afraid of something. You're going to find something that you're afraid of throughout life, but being brave means you don't let fear stop you. And that's what I had to learn through this experience.
Yeah, for whatever reason, the sound's not transferring very well, but we'll just watch.
Yeah, how about I'll go ahead and just narrate this for you. So basically what you're seeing now is I'm getting ready to go scuba diving And I'm telling you that, I have my scuba license, but I got it a long time ago and I haven't gone since because there's just something about going under the water where I can only breathe through my nose. And if something goes down, like that really scares me. So here I'm having a panic attack. I'm crying. Everybody's really nervous that I'm not going to be able to do this and the show will not be able to go on. But I decide that I really want to make sure that my viewers, the people who watch my show that count on me, can see this really cool habitat. So what we wanted to show you is a habitat called Aquarius that is about 50 to 60 feet under the water. And it's this really cool laboratory where researchers and NASA scientists and NASA astronauts can go and live in isolation like they would when they go into outer space. It's basically something that you can go and practice sort of living in outer space, but you're underwater. Because if you think about it, living underwater is very similar to living in outer space. You don't really have water to breathe, or you don't really have air to breathe. The air that you do breathe, you have to bring with you. It's kind of a hostile environment. You wouldn't want to leave without some sort of equipment, some sort of suit on, right? And then you're living in isolation with others for weeks at a time sometimes. And so it can get you can get some cabin fever a bit. So it's a really good practice for scientists who want to practice living in outer space. And here I'm basically just saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. That was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And you can see here, I'm just going to take a sigh of relief that I honestly cannot believe that I conquered my fears because I was having a panic attack not 30 minutes ago. But I was so proud of myself for being able to saying here that when I got down to that platform at the bottom, I'm telling myself, did I make it? Because if I made it, just don't freak out now because you actually did it. You got down, you did the hard part. We saw a barracuda when we were down there. That's what the fish you just saw. That was sort of a terrifying thing because I was already a bit freaked out, and seeing a barracuda down there did not help the situation. But other than that, it was the coolest experience ever, seeing this, what felt like an abandoned pirate ship under the water covered with sea life. It was one of the most intense places I've ever seen people do research. So yeah, I was very proud of myself for conquering my fears. But that's all I have for you today. I know that you all have some questions and I want to make sure you have time to ask your questions. But basically, I'm happy to answer anything and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
All right. Well, very cool, Emily. Thank you for sharing those awesome experiences. We've been lucky enough to host several events from the Aquarius Reef Base when they've had various people on down there doing experiments. We had David Cousteau during Mission 31. We've done lots of cool things with that reef base. It's
so
a really
cool.
neat facility. All right. Well, let's start meeting some of our classrooms because I know that they're going to have some questions. So let's start off. Let's go to Rapid City, South Dakota. Let's visit Mrs. Evans' class. We've got some grade 4s hanging out with us. Let's get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, grade 4s? All right. Sounds like your microphone's quiet, so come nice and close when you're ready. Even closer and nice and loud.
Oh, come closer to the computer and say your question really loud. How many times have I met Bill Nye? Yeah, a bunch of times. Probably maybe I don't know, a couple dozen times. Because I've worked with him on his TV show a bit. So that, I mean, it's kind of like if you're working with somebody on any sort of project, you have to work with them, day after day. So yeah, I've been working with him for a while. It's been really great.
All right, very cool. Those are definitely still prevalent in classrooms, only now it's DVDs, no more of the VHS.
I know. They had rolled the TV in when I was a kid.
All right, so let's go to Mrs. Landrum's group. Grade 4 is hanging out with us in Kalispell, Montana. Let me get your microphone on. How are we doing, grade 4s?
Good. All right. Maybe an answer. Yes. So what was your favorite thing that you've ever seen on your TV show?
Oh my gosh, what's the favorite thing I've ever seen on my TV show? I mean, I told you about going to Russia. That was one of the coolest things ever. I think one of the next coolest things that I've been able to see is I went to Hawaii a couple years ago, and we went to the tops of volcanoes in Hawaii to look at observatories. They basically have huge telescopes on top of volcanoes in Hawaii, and they're up really, really, really high in the clouds. And so when you're up there, all of the clouds and everything are below you. So you kind of feel like you are higher than anybody has ever been ever. And you're with these really cool telescopes that are some of the best telescopes in the entire world. And they bring them up really high because as you go higher in the atmosphere, there's less air. And air is actually bad for telescopes and for astronomers because it makes stars twinkle. When you look up in the sky and you see twinkling stars, right? They kind of blink at you. That looks pretty, but that's actually terrible for astronomers because they want to take a really crisp, clear picture of those stars. And the twinkling happens because we have a lot of disturbance in the atmosphere. The light from that star is bouncing off all of the molecules in the atmosphere. So if you can get above a lot of that air, then you can get a better picture. And so that's why we went to Hawaii. So going to Hawaii, going to the top of a volcano, seeing the best telescopes in the world, that was really cool.
All right, awesome. Did you see the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope? That's a telescope we do some events from sometimes.
Yes, we did. We
Very
sure
cool.
did. Yeah.
Just looking in Mrs. Landrum's class, and I can see you have a green screen behind you. So Emily and I are expecting some pictures of you guys in space on Twitter after this hangout. So don't let us down. All right. Let's see. Let's go to Mrs. Gill's grade 5, 6s are hanging out in Cambridge, Ontario. Let's get their microphone on. How are we doing, grade 5, 6s?
Yay! What or who inspired you to become so passionate about space?
Wow. Who inspired me to become so passionate about space? You know, I think that people like Bill Nye really did help me because I love people who are really, really good at science, but are also really, really creative and are good storytellers. Because when I was a kid, I loved art class. I really loved drawing and I loved being creative and I was good at art. And I had this idea that maybe if I was good at art, that I couldn't be good at science. But I saw people like Bill Nye, who was such an entertainer. He was so funny and fun to watch, and he was so good at storytelling. Him and people like Carl Sagan, right? He's a really good writer too. Carl Sagan is such a good writer. And so finding people that are really good at art and at writing and are also really good at science, those are the people that inspire me. Because I think when you can combine those skills together, you get something really magical. And so I wanted to create other things that are really magical and combine my artistic and creative skills with science to create cool things too.
All right, awesome question. I want to give a shout out on YouTube. We have Mrs. Matsuda's class tuning in with us. They're grade 4, 5s in Hawaii, and they said, yeah, they've got some parents who work at the telescopes up there, including a Canada, France, Hawaii telescope wife who's watching along with us. So that's pretty cool.
So cool.
And then they have, let's see, a couple questions. And I think this is probably an easy one for you to answer, but do you have any plans or do you hope one day to travel to space?
Oh my gosh, I would love, love, love to go to space. But for me, I want to make sure that it's super, super safe first. I'm glad that there are people out there who are willing to be explorers and who are willing to embrace the dangers of going on a rocket that's only launched, you know, a few dozen times to go into space. But I'm waiting for the time when we have rockets that have launched not just a few dozen times, but a few thousand times. And it's just as safe as riding in an airplane from New York to California. So eventually one day, yes, but I want to make sure it's really, really safe first.
All right. We just hosted Terry Burt's recently, and he told us about his launch, and it sounded like a pretty exciting experience.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to North Bay this time in Ontario. We're going to hang out with Mrs. Larmer's grade 5-6s. Let me get their microphone on. We'll see how they're doing. How we doing, North Bay?
Hi. Hi, my name is Evan, and my question is, what is the most stressful thing that you have ever done in your job?
Wow, that's a really good question. What is the most stressful thing that I've ever done in my job? Well, part of my job is also being a public speaker. And so that often means that I go in front of really big audiences and give speeches that I've written, right? And I love public speaking, but I get really nervous and anxious for it. And so when I have a big speech, like once I gave a speech to 3,000 people, it was very, very nerve-wracking. This was one of the first big speeches I'd ever given. It was something called a TEDx talk, and it was in front of 3,000 people. And I practiced my speech over and over and over again so that I knew it like the back of my hand. I could probably give my speech in my sleep. And thank God I did, because when I got up there, I froze and my body didn't move an inch. Like you can even actually go watch my video on YouTube. I think it's called I Don't Do Math, and I don't move an inch. And you could tell I was so nervous, but my speech went really well because I practiced it over and over and over again. So even though my physical body was numb and wouldn't move at all, my brain was still kind of working on autopilot. So I got really lucky, but that was something that I was really scared for. But when you're scared about something and nervous about something, the best thing that you can do is prepare, because you know you're going to be nervous, you know you're going to lock up and freeze, and so you want your body to be able to know what to do when that happens. And the only way that you can do that is by practicing. So yeah, probably one of those things.
All right, awesome advice. We're going to go to California this time. Mrs. Hill's got some 5th graders hanging out with us. Let's get their microphone on. How we doing, 5th graders?
Good. What is it like to talk in front of millions of people?
Well, it can be very nerve-wracking. And like I said before, you really have to practice because, I've messed up before. I've gotten in front of a lot of people and maybe I didn't practice as much as I should have. And so you kind of mess up. You leave the stage and you're like, you know what, that did not go as well as I wanted it to. And the only way you can prevent that from happening is by practicing a lot. It can be really, really fun to talk in front of a lot of people too. I talked about how scary it can be. It can also be super fun. And that's why I love it. Because when you're talking in front of a ton of people, that means a ton of people are listening to what you tell them. And so you have to think long and hard about, okay, if all of these people are going to be listening to me, what do I care about? What do I want to share with them, right? Because you don't often have an audience like that. That's a really cool thing to have lots of people listen and care about what you say. So you have to think long and hard about what you want to share with them. And for me, what I like to share a lot is my passion for space exploration. How I think space exploration is one of the best investments that we can make into the people of Earth, right? Into our technology, into the future of our species. And so I like to share a lot about space exploration. So yeah, it can be scary, but it can also be a lot of fun.
All right, great question. Let's go to Florida this time. Mr. Lavogue's got some grade 8s hanging out with us. Let's get their microphone on. North Palm Beach, how are you?
Good.
Great.
Go ahead, Alexa.
Okay. We are going to make a TV show on ancient history. Any advice on what we could do to make our show interesting?
Wow. Okay, that is awesome. Let me see, for ancient history. I know for my show that's about space exploration, the thing that I always have to keep in mind is that humans are super visual. So what you want to avoid is just having one person talk on camera and just be a talking head and talk over people's head and just like, we've all seen videos like that, especially educational videos, and those are so boring. You want to avoid that as much as possible. So having lots of different people, having a diversity of faces, talking about it from different perspectives, and going and seeing something and doing something. So one way to avoid just having a talking head is to actually go and do something, experience it yourself. People connect with other humans. So when you have a host of a TV show, that's often more engaging than if you just have a YouTube video that's showing, pictures of landscapes and having voiceover of somebody explaining what's happening in that history there, right? And so having a host of a show can be really engaging. Having lots of visuals can be really fun. Asking questions that, that sounds like they might be stupid questions, but everybody is thinking about them. Like, ask the questions that you want answered. Ask the questions that you find interesting, because maybe you're the right audience for the video that you're making it for. So yeah, having a diversity of faces, having a host of a show, going and doing an activity, I think all those things make a video about some sort of educational topic really fun.
All right. Start your TV show.
Yeah.
Our class that's joining us in Ontario at Green Noble Public School are grade 6s. Do you want to try your microphone for me and see if it's cooperating? And otherwise, send me a question via the chat sidebar, because we don't want to leave you guys out. That sounded promising. Grade 6s, can you hear us? A promising start, but I don't hear anything coming back over the microphone. So if you want to send in a question via the blue speech bubble, we'll make sure that we work that question in for you. But we do have a few more minutes, so let's grab a couple more questions from our classrooms. Let's go back to our class in Montana, who we're expecting some green screen pictures from. Let's see if they have another question.
How big do you think that Barracuda was in person?
In person, it was probably, my brain tells me that it was like this big, but I'm sure that it was actually like only that big. But when you're really, really scared and you think that you might die at any second, Barracudas seem like 3 times their size.
All right, fair enough. Mrs. Evans' class, I'll turn your microphone on again. Just make sure you come really close and nice and loud for us, because it was a bit tricky before.
How did you get the idea to write the book of Ada Lace book?
How did I get the idea to write the book of Ada Lace? So Ada, actually the name Ada Lace comes from Ada Lovelace. So raise your hand if you guys have heard of Ada Lovelace. Have some of you heard of her? So, okay, some of you. So Ada Lovelace is a real person in history from a few hundred years ago, who many consider to be the first computer programmer. Not the first female computer programmer, the first computer programmer in history. And so she was really cool, and I wanted to write a book that, was named after her, Ada Lace. But Ada, the little girl, is basically a kid that I wish that I was like when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, I was really nervous. I was really anxious. I wasn't willing to try to build things because I was too afraid that I would fail at it. But Ada's not afraid to fail. She's not afraid to try things out and build things herself. And so I really wanted to make a book that was about science and about adventure and featured a cool kid that I kind of wish that I was when I was little.
All right, looks like we have a question from our class. Perfect. So, they think they want to check their microphone. Okay, check your microphone and ask the question live if we can. Otherwise, I can read it out. So we'll give them one more shot with the microphone.
Hello?
There we go. We gotcha.
Awesome.
What is STEM?
And why do you find it important for girls to be inspired to go into STEM careers?
Yeah, great question. So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's basically just an umbrella term for all of these really cool science and tech careers. And I think it's important for women, and not just women, but just people like we need people with different backgrounds and different perspectives to pursue STEM careers, because technology affects all of us, right? All of us use different types of technology. And unless we have different people with different perspectives building that technology is not really going to be made for us. We need people who are thinking of all the different perspectives of how that technology could be used. Even things like facial recognition algorithms. If you don't have somebody who is female, if you don't have somebody who is African American writing those algorithms to detect different faces, you're going to have bugs, you're going to have flaws, you're going to have an algorithm that's not great at detecting faces, because you need somebody who can think about it from all of these different perspectives. And so our technology, even though it's created by scientists aren't objective. We like to think that we are, but we're not. So different algorithms and different technologies can be made for a different type of person, and that may not work for everybody. So it's really important that we have people from all these different perspectives thinking about how technology works and how it affects our lives.
Right. Well, Emily, we're running close to the end of our time. I know classrooms have more questions, but are you okay if classrooms tweet some questions to you later to at the Space Gal?
Of course. That would be perfect. At the Space Gal. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So boys and girls, any more questions you might have? And teachers, if you took any questions today, don't forget, if you took any pictures today, post them on Twitter, tag Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, tag Emily as well, because we'd love to see those pictures of classrooms in action. And Emily, one more question just to wrap us up today, and you can answer it really quick if you want, but a class online was wondering about your thoughts on extraterrestrials.
Ooh, I love this question. I always get it. You know, do I believe that aliens are out there? And the answer is always yes. I can't imagine that there is a universe that we don't have aliens existing somewhere else, because our universe is so big. We have billions and billions of stars. We have billions and billions of other planets. Many of those planets are just like Earth. Why would we be the only ones here? So the question is not if they're out there, but when will we find them? So yeah, I think they're out there, and it's just a matter of time before we find them.
All right. There we go. All right. Well, boys and girls, thank you so much for your awesome questions. As always, it's great to have you joining in. Emily, thanks for letting us steal some of your time and kicking off our February, where we celebrate awesome women in science and exploration. And yeah, we look forward to stealing some of your time in the future, and of course, watching more episodes of Xploration Outer Space.
Sounds good. Thanks all.
Right. Last thing I'll do, let's get those microphones turned on. Boys and girls, nice and loud. Goodbye and thank you for Emily. Here we go. See you again later in the month.